My name is Spencer Stevens. I'm Senior Vice President of Production Technology and Security at MovieLabs, and I'm one of the designers of the MovieLabs visual language. So, why do we need a visual language? Well, ours is a visual industry, and people communicate complex workflows and concepts using images and diagrams. Different companies and individuals across the industry use different conventions to create diagrams, or sometimes don't use conventions at all. Repurposing icons and/or mixing and matching visual elements from different sources can often cause confusion. That means that often, without the presenter there to explain visual elements used in a diagram, you're lost. In the past, even we at MovieLabs have created diagrams that were not consistent. Now that the industry is coming together around the 2030 vision, and we are establishing a common way to describe workflow components, it is time to have a language to talk together about how we work. We are now introducing a common visual language for media creation. I would stress here that it's not about standardizing our workflows. The Visual Language Project enables you to easily communicate whichever workflow you want, but just doing so in such a way as to enable others to quickly understand. The visual language defines common conventions for visual expression. It provides a set of reserved shapes, lines, icons to enable the consistent expression of film and television production workflows. Like all languages, it has the equivalent of both words and grammar, and as with all languages, you can use it to express your own unique ideas and get your message across more easily. Developed by MovieLabs and key industry technology partners, the Common Visual Language for Production has been endorsed by the major Hollywood studios and is now available for the entire industry to create workflow diagrams, dashboards, and for application development. The visual language is available free of charge under a Creative Commons license, so it is open, flexible, and has the resources needed for a range of use cases. Okay, let me take you through the key parts of it. There are 3 things that we are releasing to support the visual language: the visual language definition and guide, educational materials and videos, and examples and best practices. The visual language definition and guide lays down the rules as to how to consistently describe components of a workflow, dependencies, and the flows between components, and how to organize and group tasks and workflows. This includes the various object definitions and icons to use, as well as different ways to connect these objects together in a workflow. The educational materials and videos provide resources for people to learn how to use the language. The best practices and examples is a resource for people to quickly get off the ground. There is a library of examples of how the visual language can be used to describe concepts and workflows, and there will be building blocks of key concepts that you can utilize for a quick start and to save you from creating them. For example, a review and approval cycle. Let's start with the basics you'll need to communicate using the language. There are 5 concepts of workflows for which we have defined shapes: tasks, assets, participant, context, and infrastructure. These are the key things that you need to be able to describe the workflows that make creative works. If you want to see more detail on how each of them are defined, look at the MovieLabs Ontology, which underlies the visual language. So now, let's look at each of those components and how they can be applied in the visual language. Many workflows diagrams deal with assets and how they are created, modified, moved through production, and finally rendered. We use a square to represent these assets, so you can immediately look at a simple diagram and see a couple of assets, like here. So far, we've been showing these examples using text boxes to illustrate a particular task or asset. But of course, iconography is an excellent shorthand for people to quickly understand a concept. And of course, it is universal. Many available icon sets, though, do not include the sort of icons that we need to describe complex video and audio workflows. So, we have produced a library of original icons that we're also making available. For example, here are the icons for a character, a scene, a 3D asset, and an audio-visual asset. We will continue to add icons for more advanced concepts and ideas as we go forward. We encourage the community to extend the library, and of course, users can always use their own or the icons specific to their organization. So let's swap in some icons for our assets here. Sometimes we want to show who is going to do something in a workflow. For that, we use the participant shape, which is a hexagon. A participant might be an individual user, or it can be used for a collection of users like a department or even a vendor. For example, you can show that the script is being created by the screenwriter and the editor is creating the audiovisual files. The benefit of the hexagon shape is that we can cluster together a group of users to show a team who are working on something together. For example, we may want to show that the editor, the assistant editor, and the VFX supervisor are all working together on an AV asset. Of course, the whole purpose of a workflow is to get work done, and for that you need a shape for a task, the work that is being completed. For that, we use a trapezoid with inputs and outputs showing what the task is doing. Here's a basic example. We can see that we have an edit task followed by an approval task, and we can even add a gate if we want the edit task to be repeated until approval is received. Once we have the basic shapes and concepts down, you want to be able to express information flowing and dependencies between them. A lot of information is conveyed in the lines between the different elements, and for that we have defined a set of line types to express different relationships between components. Using a consistent method to show different relationships is extremely useful when diagramming complex workflows. The various line types can be used to show flows, information, messages, guidance, associations, and data. For example, we would show an asset, in this case an original camera file, flowing into a task, an encoder, and a new asset being created, the proxy. Or we can see that the script does not turn directly into the AV file, but we may want to show a relationship between them, in which case we will use the association connector, which is a line with circles at the ends. Now, we have a lot of components. We can start to create some more complex workflows, mixing these elements together. For example, we can now show a basic edit workflow, which includes assets feeding into an edit task, the output from which is two new assets, a proxy clip for approval, and the EDL. And we can show who is going to be doing the work if we choose. But we're not done yet. Even workflow diagrams want to integrate not just tasks, assets, participants, but also what infrastructure is being used to support these operations. For that, we have a shape for infrastructure, which is this pill shape. You can use the infrastructure shape together with the association line to link the infrastructure to an asset or a task that is using it. Once you have the basic elements, you'll want to start showing how these can be grouped together. And this is very much a personal choice and may depend on the audience or the author. In our language, we have two ways of showing groupings, and using an informal and a formal boundary. An informal boundary might be all the tasks needed to get an original camera file into dailies. A formal boundary might be all the participants and infrastructure in a facility. Let's get into some examples where we put all this together. Here, you can see some informal groupings of tasks. In the case of the push, the director must approve or run out of time before the work can go to editorial. Now, we can build on this by showing the participants and teams for each task. In this diagram, you can see that we have added a context box in the top right, which shows that our diagram is related to shots and sequences. We expect developers and service providers to adopt the visual language, and they can build suites of tools to help creative teams visualize their workflows, automate tasks, or show status of various ongoing workflows. As an example, here is a mock-up of how we could use all these elements in a dashboard app that shows the state of the workflow using color. And in this case, a transfer has failed. So that was a whirlwind tour of the MovieLabs Visual Language project. We hope you will start using the visual language in your everyday work and look forward to seeing how it is applied and extended. On the MovieLabs website, which is movielabs.com, you can download the core components of the visual language and look at some more examples and training materials. The 2030 vision and the challenges ahead are daunting, but speaking the same language is one step in the right direction that we can all take right now.